He is the voice behind some of fantasy's most theatrical villains. No, not him.
Always the crown.
The BAFTA goes to...
Him.
Andrew Wincottt.
My, what manner of BAFTA is this?
Winning the BAFTA for his iconic performance of Raphael in Baldur's Gate 3.
Abject tragedy.
Wincottt is also an accomplished audiobook narrator, in recent years lending his talents to the High Fantasy Trilogy that helped inspire George R.R. Martin's Song of Ice and Fire. Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn, written by Tad Williams, consists of The Dragonbone Chair, Stone of Farewell, and To Green Angel Tower. Those books, which clock in at a combined 128 hours and 51 minutes, contain some of the most theatrical villains in all of fantasy. Like Raphael after them, Wincott's performance of the antagonists chew the scenery and steal every moment they appear on the page. But how does he do it? How does Wincottt craft the performance of the most theatrical villains in all of fantasy? This video will tell you what makes a great villain, the importance of prose to make them fun, and the relationship of the character's power to their theatricality.
It won't be long before I come knocking at your door.
Warning, there will be spoilers for all 3 books of the Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn series, as well as spoilers for Baldur's Gate 3. There will be no spoilers for Tad Williams' sequel series, The Last King of Austin Ard. What makes a good villain? We know a good villain when we see one, and Raphael is a great villain. Readers of Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn know the great villains in that series: Priorates, King Elias, Duke Fengbald, Duke Benegaris, Ingenjegger, Scody. The list goes on and on. But why? What makes them great villains? Great villains have great motivations. The better the motivation, the better the villain. Great villains push the protagonist, challenging their sense of purpose. Raphael wants to rule the 9 hells, and throughout Baldur's Gate 3 we see the Cambion appear to poke and press the player into deals and tumultuous situations. In Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn, High King Elias wants his wife back from the dead, Duke Fengbald wants to make a play at being king, and Duke Benegaris wants to rule Naban at the behest of his mother.
Benegaris abruptly stooped, dropping his arm down to Xanasavin's hip, and wrapping his other arm around it. He straightened, grunting with the effort. The astrologer swayed, his feet a cubit off the ground. "No, Duke Benegaris, no! Stop that!" shrieked Nessalanta. "Go to hell!" Benegaris heaved. Xanasavin toppled over the railing, his arms grabbing at nothing, and plummeted out of sight. A long moment later, a wet smack echoed up from the courtyard.
And all of these villains have a sense of theatricality, an ostentatiousness that makes their characters memorable. And Andrew Wincottt brings that theatricality to the forefront in his villains. But what does that mean? What does it mean to be ostentatious as it pertains to being theatrical? According to Wincottt, a theatrical villain takes up space in the scene.
You'll feel the character and you'll feel how he moves. And there's a theatricality to it, a sense of acting in a space, a 3-dimensional space, as you would be on a stage. So that sense of physical space made it, and your movements within that, made it theatrical.
And while Wincottt can bring his physical performance to the video game, how does he know how to bring such a grand performance to an audio book? The importance of prose. Tad Williams' writing can make even the most minor of antagonists entertaining. Williams is known for his amazing prose. It gives his books a grand scale. And while some may call his books slow, fans revel in his writing, delighting in his robust style. Readers understand when one of the antagonists is being bombastic, as it all starts with the words on the page.
Elias suddenly whirled in his chair, craning his head around the yellowed, dagger-fanged skull of the dragon Shurike. "Curse you, Hengfisk! Did you not see me call for my cup? My throat is burning!" The pop-eyed monk hurried to the king's side. Elias carefully took the cup from him and set it down, then hit Hengfisk on the side of his head so swiftly and powerfully that the cupbearer was flung to the floor as if lightning struck. Elias then calmly drained the steaming draught.
Did you catch that word usage? King Elias whirls in his chair. He cranes his neck, hits Hengfist in the head, and calmly finishes his drink. All of this informs the narrator and the reader as to the type of man we're dealing with. Here's another example from later in the book. Catch the words that inform Wincott's narration.
He drew the sword from its scabbard. The mottled grey blade seemed a living thing, something pulled against its will from beneath a rock. As Elias held it before him, the wind lifted his cloak, spreading it above him like wings. For a moment, the blotchy twilight made him a pinioned thing, a demon out of dark ages past. He and all he leads will die, Narrates, the king hissed. They do not know who they meddle with. Narrates regarded him with genuine uneasiness. Your brother does not know, my king, but you will show him. Elias turned and brandished the sword at the eastern horizon. In the distance, a flicker of lightning played across the turbulent darkness. Come then, he shouted. Come all of you. There is death enough to be shared. No one will take the Dragonbone Chair from me. No one can. As if in answer, there came a dim rumble of thunder.
But is there a pattern as to why some antagonists are more over the top than others? Well, yes, and it has to do with the antagonist's position in life, because power informs theatricality. The more power the antagonist wields, the more theatrical they can be as a villain. Sometimes when a minor villain does not have the page count to fully flesh out their nuance, the writer must make them at the very least fun. In this huge series, page count is not a problem for Tad Williams, and he's able to create some of the most despicable minor antagonists in all of fantasy. Let's look at Fengbald as he appears in To Green Angel Tower, the third book of the trilogy. Fengbald is a spoiled fop and has recently ascended to the status of Duke of Falshire in Erkenland. He is mean, cunning, and quick-tempered. What's more, he believes he's absolutely deserving of his lot in life. Fengbald feels he's on the cusp of his ultimate desire, ascension to the Dragonbone Chair, a desire Wincott plays to perfection.
Only a fool, I say, could not see that King Elias is a dying man. He waved his hand expansively, slopping a little wine over the rim of his cup. Whether he has caught some wasting illness, or whether the priest Narrates is slowly poisoning him, I do not care. The Red Priest is an idiot. If he thinks he can rule the kingdom, he is the most hated man in Ostenard. No, when Elias dies, only someone of noble blood will be able to rule. And who will that be? Excited by his own words, he drained the remainder of his cup in a single draught. Who else? And who would oppose me? The king's daughter, that fickle...
And when you compare this performance to other minor antagonists in the series, you can see how their lack of power makes them less theatrical. Take Ingen Jegger, for example, a huntsman for the Norn Queen.
One of the cloaked men took a limping, stiff-legged pace forward. Simon recognized the sunburned skin and pale beard. Go away, Zidaya, Ingen Jegger said. His voice was slow and cold. The Queen's huntsman has no quarrel with you. It is those mortals cowering behind who have thwarted me, and who cannot be allowed to leave this place. They are under my protection, mortal man. Prince Jiriki patted his sword. Go back and sit beneath Otuku's table. You will get no scraps here. Ingen Jegger nodded. So be it. He waved a negligent hand, and one of his huntsmen swiftly drew his bow and fired.
Contrast these characters to Wincott's performance of Simon Snowlock, the protagonist of the Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn series. At the beginning of the first book, Simon is a scullion. He's 14 years old and realistically dumb like a boy his age would be. And look at Miriamel, princess to the realm and daughter of High King Elias.
What have you got in your hand? Simon drew his sword out of the tangle of his cloak. As Miriamel watched, her apprehension far from gone, he kneeled before her. Miriamel, princess, I will give you the only gift I have left to give. He extended the hilt of his sword toward her, lowering his head and staring fixedly at the jungle of grass around his boots. My service. I am a knight now. I swear that you are my mistress, and that I will serve you as your protector, if you will have me. Oh, Simon, she said. If you will not have me, Or cannot, for some reason I'm still too stupid to know? Then just tell me. We can still be friends. There was a long pause. Simon looked down at the ground again and felt his head spinning. Of course, she said at last. Of course I will have you, dear Simon. There was an odd catch in her voice. She laughed raggedly. But I will never forgive you for this.
Miriam L. occupies a station in life most cannot relate to. So, why does Wincott not display the same theatricality in his performance of her? She technically has royal power as a princess, right? Well, because she's not an antagonist, but it goes deeper than that. Throughout the trilogy, Miriam L. plays down her role of princess and plays up her role of adventurer. You can hear Wincott's subdued performance, letting the feelings of the moment speak as these two young adults navigate their feelings for each other. But theatricality doesn't just live with the antagonist. There are times when the protagonists have theatrical moments, and when that happens, it tends not to make you hate them, but love them. Simon, believing he is at the end of his life, lifts up the magic sword Thorn to fight the dragon Ikjarjuk at the end of the Dragonbone Chair.
One hand stole up to Miriam L's scarf at his throat, and then he grasped the silver-wrapped hilt once more. Ikjarjuk's head loomed, the gullet a black pit, the eye a blue lantern. The world seemed constructed of silence. What should he shout at the last? He remembered what Jiriki had once said of mortals, even as the frosty murk of the dragon blew down on him, a stench like sour, cold earth and wet stones. Here I am, he cried, and brought Thorn whistling toward the baleful eye. I am Simon! Something caught at the blade, and a gout of black blood spat at him, burning like fire, like ice, searing his face, even as a great white something crashed through and carried him down into darkness.
If you like this video, consider subscribing. I do not upload on a regular schedule. Writing, shooting, and editing these videos takes me a while, so if you want to watch the next video when it comes out, please subscribe. Conclusion.
Keep being creative. Keep creating these worlds, and maybe one day we'll learn to protect the one we're in.
The power these characters wield, the prose the authors implement, informs their characters' theatricality. Wincott can elevate words on a page and tease nuance from despicable characters, or use their position of power to add an ostentatious shade to their already dirty outer shell. And when you have a villain with only a few pages in a 1,000-page story or a few minutes in a 100-hour game, Wincott can make them fun, theatrical, and best of all, memorable.
The good thing is, though, there's only one little voice you really should listen to. Mine.
If you'd like to see more from me, click the link on your screen now. Thank you for watching.